konuklar,
dear guests, Kerim Education, Culture and Health Foundation and Türkân Istanbul branch and Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality organized this international Kenan Rifai Symposium, and this is the second session in which we are together. I'd like to volume to be turned up. From Surah Al-Yunus, of course, for the people of Allah, there is the peace of heart, because they are freed from fear and concern. Fear is from the future and concern is from the past. And they transcended both the past and future. The sorrow mostly comes from three reasons. The first one is the past sins. The second one is the lost worldly goods, properties, positions. And the third one is being attacked on dignity. From the sorrow of the sin, you ask refuge of Allah, and for the worldly properties, well, you just give up on them. And about the damage coming from the people, it's tolerance and patience, the remedy of them. This is how you get rid of the claustrophobia of the heart. This is how my mentor says. In this session, the female students of Kenan Rifai will be taken. In our society, when we say women, mostly the clothes comes to mind. Let my mentor speak on that. Since it's the same very moment, at that time of my mentor, someone said the skirts are longer now, and I'm happy about that. And my mentor says, I care about everything return to its own essence. How would you know that it's going to be shorter? So this is about the tide. It's not about how long or short the skirt is, but it's more about playing the flute in it. It's not about putting on or putting off, because we come to the world as naked, and we borrow what we wear, and then in the grave we again put off everything that we have. So this is why I neither get happiness nor sorrow out of clothes. The essence is watching this the spiritual essence in everything. With this understanding, let's start this session. The session is going to be about women. Mustafa Kara Bey had to catch a flight, so he assigned Mehmet Demirci Hoca to his place. In the book, on the first page of the book, please, I want you to give attention to that. And May 29th, 2015, the Tesbihat-ı La ilahe illallah, its conquest is La mevcude illallah, and Hazreti Kenan Rifai, eyvallah. Professor Mehmet Demirci is going to chair the session, and a pen writing with his mentor Nezihe Araz and Semiha Cemâl, the heart of love, Türkân Eren Bayar and Türkân Erkmen, her nephew, and Eren Bayar is going to read his part. Medical doctor Turgut Alsırt is the other participant of this session. His presentation is going to be about Mother Sâmiha. And another medical doctor we have, Asuman Kulaksız. One of Sister Asuman is going to come, a daughter of Meşkure Anne, Mother Meşkure. Mother Meşkure Enlightening Her Time is the title of her presentation.
Evet, Fahrünnisa Bilecik gelemedi. Onun tebliğini de
Fahrünnisa Bilecik could not make it, and Yekta Zulfikar is going to read her presentation, her paper. İlhan Ayverdi, an honored perfected human being from the pre-eternal to eternity.
Efendim hepinizi saygıyla, muhabbetle selamlıyorum.
I would like to greet you all with respect and muhabbet. The days when this symposium was about to be organized, since I have experienced in chairing these, moderating these sessions, they actually kindly asked me, and I said to them, my physical power doesn't suffice, so please don't give me chairperson duty. But then Mustafa Kara actually now asked me to do it. So whatever happens is good for us, is auspicious. So that's why, as far as my power suffice, I'll try to perform my duty. Tasawwuf has got both an emotional and a scientific, knowledge-wise side. In academia and in symposium, generally the knowledge side of tasawwuf is more dominant. Of course, for a human being, both emotions and intellect is important. Emotions actually make you fly, but the intellect side make you stand firmly on the ground. And in this symposium, I should confess, I actually prefer the knowledge side to be more dominant. But now emotion is more dominant, but has been more dominant so far. But I think now in this session, despite myself, there will be more emotion which is dominant. Eylül Yalçınkaya, this previous speaker, I was so amazed because till the very end, she actually was very knowledgeable, and knowledge was dominant in her. But the moment she said the little puppy, everybody actually applauded her. There came into being the emotion and love. Applauding is actually a strange thing. Human beings try to express themselves. Perhaps, I think it is quoted from Arif Nihat Asya. The person who addresses speaks very well and everybody applauds him. And when everybody went out, they swept all the applauses from the floor. Let me cut it short. Türkân, Erkmen, we have actually seen him on the screen previously. She is one of the eldest friends of this society. Nezihe, Araz and Semiha Cemâl will be presented. Semiha Cemâl will be presented by Eren. There's also small request. It has actually taken a little bit longer than expected. I'm sorry, I won't be able to join the final session because I need to catch a plane. So please, let us try not to exceed the 20 minutes limit. Before I start my talk, we all know that the dervishes don't see people's fault. But when I'm trying to explain this beautiful lady with my own assumptions, so if I actually have any kind of fault, any kind of expression that would hurt people, from the very beginning, I would like to ask your apologies in front of you. Semiha Cemâl was born in 1905 and passed away in 1936. She graduated from the Department of Philosophy of Istanbul University in 1926. And after a period, as an assistant, she began teaching philosophy and psychology at high schools to raise human beings. She has various works and also done translations of philosophy texts. She has contributed greatly to the creation of a language of philosophy in Turkey. In my opinion, her tasawwuf upbringing allowed her to comment on ancient Greek philosophy in the best way. Semiha Cemâl melted her ego in Kenan Rifai's wisdom-filled and tasawwuf-adorned existence, and had been an exceptional student and a lover of truth. So when reading her prose pieces, you can really feel the love in her. As a student, her teachers actually greatly admired her understanding, her comprehension, her perseverance, and her power of reasoning. Yusuf Ziya, in a pamphlet published under his supervision, writes the following about Semiha Cemâl. Please read Dawood's Psalms at least once. You will see that their inspiration is from the same spring. As I was reading this piece, I thought the following: if this girl were to come up and say that I'm inspired by Allah, and this is my proof, undoubtedly I would be the first believer. Today people are leaning towards tasawwuf or other teachings to develop their inner worlds in modern life, but we have difficulty practicing, putting these into practices, these teachings and tasawwuf. So we really want to be understood in this world, but unfortunately we don't actually show any endeavor. So that's why in this attempt of finding ourselves, we find these very utopic. So when we actually become a member of a group, we do this to run away from punishment or to cover our feelings of revenge. But we know that when we actually are initiated by a path, or when we enter upon a path, it's due to a desire to know oneself as the result of even tasawwuf as a trend. Yesterday we watched the video, her first initiation by Kenan Rifai. If I'm not mistaken, she said she was writing letters, poetry, and there was something burning inside of me. So she was actually mentioning a kind of a longing. So this kind of looking for, this seeking is actually coming from the chest, from the heart. So that's what I'd like to say. So in our era, the divine knowledge or Far Eastern kind of teachings, we are approaching these just because they are trends, but our inner structure, our inner part does never ever change. Tasawwuf makes us actually close to ourselves. It doesn't alienate ourselves from ourself. It doesn't otherize ourselves. So it actually requires determination, commitment to put into practice tasawwuf teachings, because aşk, divine love, means movement. It's the source of movement. So that is exactly what Semiha Cemâl's source of movement is. That's aşk and gönül, illuminated heart. Her heart was so naive, so pure, that Kenan Rifai said, when I look at her, I see my own reflection. So she is actually, because of this love awakened in her, she's in the social life in body, but with her heart, she's away from all the materialism. Because in tasawwuf, you know, intellect is also very important. Without intellect, we cannot mention a single action. But intellect is actually a means, but we shouldn't actually ignore it, but we should transcend it. Because intellect, because aşk make us do things that intellect opposes. So this is actually in tasawwuf the akıl, the intellect of heart, of aşk. So before Semiha Cemâl met Kenan Rifai, intellect had a leading role in her life, but then she submitted her intellect in the love of her mürşid. So throughout her life there is deep faith which cannot be actually dependent on form. So nowadays we actually are trying to be knowledgeable, pursue our careers, and become a part of social life so that we can make ourselves happy. We try to gain every kind of knowledge, but such an attempt actually makes us unhappy, because this is just the shell of the real life, the real knowledge. The real knowledge is the knowledge of the illuminated heart. The modern era's biggest problem is that people show no effort in order to enhance their inner world. And as you know, the Prophet says, I have come here to complete beautiful conduct. And as we know, Islam is submission. It's actually submission to love itself, to aşk itself. So if we actually do not submit to real divine love, aşk, we cannot become a whole human being. So here, the obstacle, the problematic about making us really faithful is that if Allah suffices everything, why do we have the evil in this world? Everything, she says, Semiha Cemâl, is good. People think when they do actually something bad, evil, they think it's good, but they are just cross-eyed. So let's actually give two people as an example. The first one likes flowers, and the second one, both love flowers. The first one picks up the flowers, and the other one, the first one is actually also an action of loving, because you pick it up. A picked flower, as you very well know, run and fade away. It will not actually be non-existent, but nobody has this knowledge, because this is a different manifestation of love. So as you see, the good and the bad, the good and the evil, as different in different degrees, is actually found in one human being. So whichever side we are nourishing, or dependent on how we receive love, how we perceive love. The most important thing here is actually to perceive love as a whole, and the wholeness here, the oneness here, is Allah. So such a person actually thinks globally. So that person treats each and every object, not only people, equally. That's why dervishes do not actually step on the ground in very strongly or harshly, and such behavior we can see in Semiha Cemâl's life. in her work called Aşk, Divine Love, she says, love is such a sea. Those who are drowned, immersed in it, there is no complaint. And look at the bottom of the sea, there is nothing but silence. No noise, no voice. All the noise and voice and these waves are on the surface of the sea. But there is one spirit, and this is actually just love. And in the other one, he says, if you don't exist, my murshid, I wouldn't know Allah. If you weren't there, I wouldn't have known love. If there hadn't been love, I wouldn't have known you. She said this for her teacher. So those who know philosophy will recognize Plato's cave allegory. How strange it is that reality always comes out from a dark cave. There are people chained within a cave ever since their birth, and there is a fire that continuously burns at the entrance of the cave. These people think that the shadows of the beings passing behind this fire are actual beings. But one day, one of them frees herself from these chains and goes out of this dark cave. And the person who leaves the cave after freeing herself from the chains realizes that this world is not made of just a cave. And later, and this person, which is actually the hardest thing to achieve, goes back to the cave to tell the people who are chained and whose eyes have become accustomed to such darkness that this is not the entire world. So in philosophy, this person who exists from the cave is the philosopher, and in tasawwuf we call such people the perfected human being. And in Semiha Cemâl's life, the person who took her out of darkness of the material and united her with this light of love is Kenan Rifai. Then how does a perfect human being view another human? One day Ömer said, I love you, Prophet Muhammad. And Prophet Muhammad said, until you love me more than your nafs, do not ever say that you love me. And Kenan Rifai also says, when you love everything that I love, then you will love me. And there is nothing that I don't love. So us ordinary humans actually categorize things, and we use our intellect, certain molds we have. So when we say a person, our mind makes distinctions. Beautiful person, good person, wise person, bad person. Whereas for those who think with their illuminated heart, there is only just human being. And like every other being, Allah is manifest. So if we were to ask why Kenan Rifai chose Semiha Cemâl as his teacher, because it will be that every voice wants an ear that will hear what he says, and not every ear hears. So everything's perception of life is different. Very few humans bring universality into their lives. The person who sees the whole picture understands that it's not just a part will give up everything they will have for the sake of love until they want nothing other than love. Before she passed away, there is this dialogue between herself and her teacher Kenan Rifai. I have nothing, no pleasure, no fun, nothing. I only have love, my dear Semiha. How poor we are. Yes, I am the sheikh of Garam, of love. She passed away when she was 31. In Tasawwuf, we know very well that you can actually only die of love and revive from love. Death is just to go from one room into another. It's a dimensional change. So for us, death is just a window in life. Death is not the end. It is just a beginning. So death For this reason, Rumi says in Meclis-i Seba, in the 7th gathering, death by the hand of the beloved births life.
Eren Hanım'a çok teşekkür ediyorum. Beni ikaz etme mecburiyetinde bırakmadı.
Thank you very much. She really actually didn't exceed 20 minutes. And with her beautiful, eloquent words, she actually said what should be said. Thank you very much. And the second speech is actually about Sâmiha Anne. But there is also another mini presentation about Nezihe, Araz. So I'm taking back those 5 minutes. It's even shorter. Sorry, I just happened to sit here the last minute, so I didn't know. Türkân teyze, how we wish she were here. How we wish, she was reading so that we could see her, because she is a very holy person. Now, after Semiha Cemâl, there is a very short introduction about Nezihe, Araz. My dear Nezihe, Araz, I met my dear sister Nezihe in 1946 at the door of mercy of Kenan Rifai. This is such a door of mercy that it was better to ask who has it not harbored. Dignitaries, patriarchs, priests, poets, scholars, professors, rich people, poor people, because this was and continues to be the hearth where everyone finds peace. My fellow companion Nezihe was from Ankara. She was a young assistant professor in philosophy, and her father was one of the first members of the parliament, Rıfat Araz Beyefendi, and her mother was Müzeyyen Hanımefendi. The one who was conducive to this family finding the gate of mercy was Nezihe's older brother Cemâl Bey. Kenan Rifai was his teacher from high school and had left a tremendous impression on him. So Cemâl loved Kenan Rifai very much. For this reason, he wanted to introduce his family. And Nezihe was not of a hard disposition. Was actually of a hard disposition, but after meeting Kenan Rifai, this brittleness transformed into spirituality, and her teacher discovered the abilities given to her by the Creator and expanded her horizons. And until 1950, she studied with her teacher, Kenan Rifai. And after Kenan Rifai's passing, she began journalism and writing. At the same time, work on Kenan Rifai's Mesnevi commentary and discourses would be done with Sâmiha Ayverdi, Safiye Erol, Sofi Huri, herself, and Nihat Sami Banarlı, all of whom writers as valuable as the other, contributing to the process. So alongside this, Nezihe began to write her most beautiful tasawwuf books as well. She poured what she had learned from her teacher onto the pages. Sometimes her teacher appeared as Ahmet Yesevi, sometimes as Mevlana, sometimes as Yunus Emre in Sorrowful Mill. She always wrote her teacher. Her life was spent writing. Her pen was beautiful and smooth. In one of her letters, she wrote to me the following: "My dear Türkân, sorrows and pains are as the yeast raising the love of Allah." So beautiful were these words that I've never forgot them. It was almost as if my dear Nezihe was speaking about herself a little bit. She left us her valuable works and her love, and has united with her beloved. Be in the divine light, my beautiful sister. You're always a part of us. May Allah not separate us in the other world as well. If you permit, I would like to talk about Türkân abla as well, because you have actually seen her talk about Kenan Rifai. There she said, "On his face I have witnessed the face of Allah. He is the reality of Kabe." That's why we didn't feel the need to go to Kabe. So what is it that she saw in him? Ibn Arabi says, something's face is that thing's reality. So if you don't actually, if you want to see him, you have to actually unveil that face. So that means she actually must have unveiled the face so that she witnessed the true reality of Allah. She has given us some clues. We didn't actually know anything. We learned everything from him. So that means we actually should be sitting before our murshid like a blank page, so that he can actually transfer all the knowledge to us. And Reşit, I think, said, I have spent years to actually forget what I had learned. Look at this wall, the mother says. The father says, what is in there? There is nothing, the daughter replies. And the father says, so you can do anything, any painting that you like. So in this nothingness, you can do anything and everything. Just like in İhlas Surah, such murshids have always been in the presence of Allah, and this is the pleasure. So we have actually such a beautiful student as her, witnessing the Cemâl, the beauty in him, and her murshid says for her, in Türkân's face, Tebareke Surah is inscribed. So my teacher about Tebareke said, Cemal Nursargut said, reading it, understanding it, or just reading the Arabic actually enhances your knowledge, increases your ashk, and it makes you obey your Rabb, your teacher, and makes you unite with Allah. May Allah bestow this upon all of us.
Kenan Rifai Hazretleri'nin
the greatness of Kenan Rifai, even though he hadn't had any kind of indication of how great a master he was, to have a student like Nezihe Araz with a very high quality philosophy, education and intelligence, he's being able to show the light of reality and lead them towards a great service by penning this reality must be one of the other indicators of her greatness. I remember seeing Nezihe Araz once or twice, but before that I had read two of her very valuable works, Anatolian Evliyas and Suffering Mill. These are actually one of the pioneering books that really encourages and lead us in spirituality. The Dertli Dorap, the Suffering Mill, has got a unusual, extraordinary place in us. Her ability in narrating stories is fabulous. I would actually also express my sorrow. I don't know whether how much young generation is aware of these two beautiful books. Anadolu Evliyaları has been changed into Anadolu Erenleri, which is those attained in Anatolia. And unfortunately, I would be so unhappy if the beautiful language has been simplified. I'm hoping that it's not the case. So when we move out of this conference, we will, inshallah, gain so many things. So if there are any young people here, or if there are parents, I would highly recommend you buy and read Nezihe Araz books. Now Turgut Alsırt will be talking about Sâmiha Anne to us. There are some really great people, for example Yahya Kemal. We got to know Yahya Kemal through Nihat Sami Banarlı. if he weren't, we wouldn't be able to know him. Sâmiha Anne, kissing her hands and sitting before her presence, these are things that I have been blessed to have experienced. And after her passing away, how I wish, I say, those who actually are initiated by this path after her dying, how I wish they had the chance to see Sâmiha Anne. Because seeing does make a difference. Yes, reading is fine, but the eye has its right. So seeing may actually be much more influential. So this great Sufi master Kenan Rifai is actually known through her pens, through her writings. If she hadn't done so, perhaps we wouldn't be able to gather and perceive the real meaning, the complete truth of Kenan Rifai. There's also this book called Islam in the 20th century. So what kind of an Islam we should have in that century? She has written down the perfect examples. So now next to me is sitting one of Sâmiha Ayverdi's oldest students. When we were coming back from lunch, together with his wife, they were just mentioning that they used to live in Istanbul. Yes. I would like to greet you with regards and love. As they have mentioned, I would like to talk about my dear beloved Sâmiha Anne. My teacher, today is Sâmiha, tomorrow is Sâmiha, till the doomsday it will be Sâmiha. And this is the outcome of the efforts of Kenan Rifai, and what Kenan Rifai says as a mirror. She is actually the full reflection of the brightest mirror. So we cannot actually resemble her, no matter how much we try. But I'd like to try to explain some of her characteristics, some parts, some features that are related to myself. I will talk about now
there had been great talents, and he was born with great capacity, and from an early age he understood everything from a very early age on, and he collected all of that in his mind, and he had a pretty extraordinary childhood, and she has been one of the disciples in the circle of enlightenment of Kenan Rifai Hazretleri, and in a very short time for Tekamül, she was a producer now, not only a consumer. She had risen to the stage of producer than just an average consumer. Miss Safiye Erol had told us that the society needed a new lifestyle. She called them the producers, the manufacturers are needed in the society. And she says the society is divided into two groups: the producers, the manufacturers, and the consumers. And Mother Semiha was a producer in those terms, starting from the early age of 38, and thus started her service to humanity. With her very eloquent description, Mürşit is a person who can mingle the time of the needs of the time and mingle them with the knowledge, and the follower, the disciple, is a person who delivers this to the society and converts the ideas into actions as a complementary factor. Mother Sâmiha has written tasawwuf novels and stories, and also dealt with history of philosophy. She's an historian, and also dealt with the important issues of the society, came up with suggestions for solutions, and in the limited time she had discoursed with her heart and written very touching poems, and her major quality though was being a mutasawwif. The source of all her activities and actions were tasawwuf, and tasawwuf has raised many important people for Turkish society, and in that world of her times, people did not maybe notice it during the rush of everyday routine, but she tried to turn the faces of people to the good, and all the people who tried to turn people towards this direction are from the tasawwuf circle. Sâmiha Ayverdi was also one of those people who tried to do the same, and she was an active part of that movement to make it an active part of our lives, to free people from the trivial, menial pleasures and problems, and to make them work for the society, to service the society, and to deliver them the cleanest, the purest Cemâl to them, and also the presence of love, the joy of love, to infiltrate this to them is what she started to work for. That is what she devoted herself to, seeing haq in the society with the love of God. She united this with the love of people, so she was a muvahhid. So her field of action were the society and the people making up society. Her understanding of Tevhid, her love for Tevhid, made her work for the benefit of the people. That's what she devoted herself to. And the young people who would form the Muslim Turkish society was what she worked for, because she thought they were not being educated well. Even though the name implied national, the educational system was inclined towards left, and the education was inclined towards left, and when they were separated from their families and came to the metropoles for college education, they had a non-beneficial, useless sense of liberty and freedom, and they were under the influence of many different resources, and these negative influences would accelerate their self and selfishness and they would take part in conscious or unconscious acts of non-fruitful joys. And Mother Semiha thought that this was not beneficial. So the values that created a refined civilization is the part that they needed to learn, is what she thought. 1,000 years for the word of God, ilahul kelimullah, to raise the word of God. Whoever is a martyr or a veteran, which is Turkey, he says the children of that land will certainly yield other people. One way or another, consciously or unconsciously, there are going to be new people who need an exemplary person, because this is the land who had given martyrs for this religion for 1,000 years. And also they would be the seeds, the root of the future for the Turkish Islam society. And in the relationship of the human being with God, to take the criteria of the principles of haq, honesty, integrity, virtue, morals, kindness, manners, and having mercy and compassion in all sorts of exchange with living and non-living creatures. Also, this would be something that would raise the level of the individual and the society, she said. And these young people needed to work for the society, to serve the society, she believes. That is what they needed to be prepared for. And this was like the tree in a seed, because the word of God should be taught to them as a goal, as an outcome. And haq and hakikat is about serving others more than you serve yourself. This is how you learn it from people who serve to others more than they serve themselves. Virtue, integrity, honesty, and other values are transferred to another human being as a debt of humanity, and helping the fallen and filling the open hand, not to cheat, not to lie, not to have injustice or disloyalty, all of those things that degrade humanity. We need to rid them of these qualities, and they need to learn to rid themselves of these negative qualities, she said. But there is not an institution to achieve this. So especially for the learned and cultured people, there were the dargahs, but there was no dargah lodge anymore, or any institution which took over that task. And this would not be left untouched, so the task was on the shoulders of the person who prayed to God, saying, let God not prevent me from serving the children of this land, that all of which I see as my own children. That mother with her warmth, with her sincerity, with her compassion, but also quite strict on her principles. That nest would be a place for those young people, because no person, no human being could resist the warmth and closeness of a mother, of a spiritual mother, and the protection of that mother. Nobody would refrain from that. And that mother had the compassion, the flood of compassion and love and tolerance. And they are informed of this treasure inside them. And with a Muhammadi ahlak, they have a self-control, and they are made the servants of haq and the people. So the commentary of Islam, in accordance with 20th century, with the purity of the first era of Islam, in this nest of Kemal and Cemâl, many faithful Turkish young people have been educated and raised. And with time, this unique mother has gathered young people from all over Anatolia, from different places, with different characters, with different backgrounds, and entwined them, mingled them with ikhlas and iman. She created a circle of muhabbet, and that circle enlarged and expanded, and finally the Kubbe Altı Foundation has been formed. The Kubbe Altı Academy is formed, and Kubbe Altı Foundation is formed. Whatever she has written, she has practiced it. Whatever she has practiced it, she has preached it. And she was involved with them in detail, and the people around that unique mother, around that great teacher, the people who have been processed in that chain of adab, they have opened their arms to us, and they were embraced so much that this ever-giving great personality gave them the love, the compassion, the manners, the knowledge, the information. The people who gave us all of that, their speeches, their discourses, and the discourses and speeches of Sâmiha Anne, her books, her writings, her articles, in that beautiful environment, in that beautiful ambience, without being aware of anything, we had been raised and trained. Tamed and trained. You can ask me, what have you learned? Of course I can say a couple of things, but it was never given to us as orders or as a procedure. But I want to say them one by one. All of them were given to us indirectly, without ever noticing. We learned this through the love of those people, being unaware of what we were being taught. They told us, say, you will read, you will think, you will study, and you will serve to your nation, to your people, to your country. Whatever profession you choose, you're going to be the best at it. And with your looks and with your attitudes and behaviors, you will be an accepted and appreciated member of the society, and you will serve them as such a person. And also the spiritual Cemâl is important, but it is true with the physical being. So you have to be the most perfect human being, but you cannot ignore spirituality. You will also learn tasawwuf, because tasawwuf is about the a synthesis of the good morals and everything. It is about the place of us with other people, and it is bringing it together with the truth. And those people bringing it together enables them to have a moral development, and this will be contributed with amal, with action. It would be, this is love of God, and it is the beauty of the morals, the beautiful conduct, and so this would raise you spiritually, and the spiritual beautiful conduct would emerge, and love of God would not be abstract anymore, and it would be manifested in the daily world among the people. And Mother Sâmiha said like this: the history of humanity shows us that what connects people with interest and with affinity and affliction is the translation of the abstract to the tangible. And her master said, your love for God, how will you be grateful to a God that manifests your love of God to a creature of God? And in that worldview, that dost comes to us, and that love for that dost initiates and triggers all forces of kudret and helps with the human beings' challenge and fight with the daily world. And Mother Sâmiha loves us so much, but he never called us my children. He always called us the children of my master. And she introduced us to İnsan-ı Kamil, the perfected human. And she made it possible for us to like, to know, to love the İnsan-ı Kamil. Not too many people are aware of İnsan-ı Kamil. That was her biggest favor to us, to introduce İnsan-ı Kamil to us. And she introduced İnsan-ı Kamil to us with that circle people knew about. It was never forgotten. They've never forgotten what they've been taught. After their education ended, they had their professions, they were dispersed to all parts of Turkey, but wherever they were working, they followed those principles. As much as, of course, they personally could do it based on their personal talent and capacity, but they never forgot it. And the interest and love and attention of Mother Sâmiha and her beautiful gaze, nazar of her beautiful eyes, never ceased to be with us. And we started families by then, and we had wives and children, and the circle enlarged with the new members, with our families. And it continued. I think I was able to tell what her approach to us was. I am about to finish. What I want to say is very important, is Mother Sâmiha's distant goal, distant outcome. Since she was a historian, she knew that the civilization established in Anatolia 1,000 years ago was based on tasawwuf, founded on principles of tasawwuf. Because, as you know, the great mutasawwifs were all raised in that climate of tasawwuf in Anatolia. And these great mutasawwifs and all the people that they have raised has shown the West as a goal. Firstly, Anatolia, Gaziantep and Bakiantep, the Alps, the Erens had all come to Anatolia, and even Alp Aslan in the Malazgirt battle, the reason that they opened Anatolia, the Mürşit was Ebu Nasır Abdülmalik el-Buhari Hazretleri, and one of the great mutasawwifs back then was Ebul Hasan Harakani, and he was a martyr in the battles for opening up Anatolia. Mevlana Hazretleri, Yunus Emre, and Hacı Bektaş Veli, and other great mutasawwifs, and the Ottoman era, Şeyh Edebali, and the surrounding people, all of those great mutasawwifs has served the founding of that civilization. And Mother Sâmiha just like we believe in life after that, we have lost an order, a lifestyle, and a mentality. But since we believe that there is life after death, then a new creation will be possible, she said. Halk-ı Cedid, a new creation will also be possible. And this turmoil will yield a new life, a new mentality, and it shall arise again, she said. And in a letter she has written to me, look and hear what she says. I find it very important, significant, and she found it very significant, and as a response to my letter it was written, but she later had it typed and circulated to all of our brothers. And today a ground, it doesn't say a monument, but it says the ground of a monument is being founded today. All of us is a building block in that foundation, and the master here is the takdiri ilahi, shaping us one by one and places us wherever we fit. Our job here is to be in close contact with each other and to be amalgamated with the shaping of God Almighty. And this calls for the surrender of the Creator. So there is no you and I, there is no separation, there is unity, and which prevents all sorts of fitna or greed or any deceit, any cheating, and whatever is funny in the haq that sits in the heart. And to you and to your brothers, just like our Hazreti Prophet has ordered to see haq as haq and follow it, and to see batil as batil and to refrain from it is what I intend to do. That's why we always need to be very careful about our steps, and we have to walk with the muhabbet of haq, and whatever we do, we need to do it with the spirit of mujahede, holy war. And this is the responsibility on our shoulders, and let God not prevent his himmet from us in that. Whenever she addressed us, I am a bit spoiled now and I have to end. We listen to you with much pleasure, with great pleasure. It has been half an hour already. It is your discretion. When would you like to wrap up? I have just a little, tiny little to wrap up. What I want to say is here, Mother Semiha, whatever she emphasized is always be united, never separate, she said. In all her letters, in all her addresses, that's what she said. The reason being, of course, she didn't clearly say it. In Quran Karim, like most of you all know, like Mr. Mehmet knows it only too well, in the Surah Isaf, there is a verse, he says, God loves those who are in a jihad like amalgamated, iron amalgamated people in one order. And that is what God loves, he says, like amalgamated lead soldiers or welded soldiers like a unity.
Bir dakikalık lafım.
Buyurun.
Ha işte efendim.
So, the book of Hazreti Kenan Rifai, the author and the commentator of the same book, that unique mother with her old age, with her fragile body, and the diseases hurting her fragile body, with all the challenges of daily life, up until to her last minute, kept serving people. When she was not in a position to write, she started to dictate them, and she left lots of writings. Ayşe Ünsal and Zeynep Uluer's sisters are preparing it for publishing, and Kubbe Altı publishes them part by part. She says, we are so away from the material, from the nafs, we have almost become spirit, soul, That is why we are not visible in the most bright, the shiniest, reflective of mirrors. As an embodiment of that, up until her last minute, she has imbibed her being from non-beingness, and the circle around her had been nourished from her pearls of wisdom. And what does she say in her poem? Come on. You look like a young girl out of the water. At the early hours of morning, let's take a walk in the garden. Sleeping lazily, the rose blossom with an invisible act of life opens up. And in that time where I live, I want to prepare a gift to the times to come. She prepared her gift, she left it, and she has gone. Let him met be unto her.
Efendim, Doktor Can'dan teşekkür ediyoruz.
We thank Dr. Turgut Alsırt from the depths of our heart, and he expressed the issue from within his own heart. Thanks again. I'm sorry to exploit your time.
Evet, benim gördüğüm kadarıyla Sâmiha Anne
As far as I can follow, Mother Semiha, she had a kind of a high, like metaphysical tension, a source of electricity, with all her grandeur was high, and her situation has been lowered to our level like a transformer. This lady is called İlhan Ayverdi. I think the tasawwuf movements of the day, we were talking about that one day, and she went inside and came back with a quartet of Sheikh Galib, which says,
davetlidir galip safaya, sakın zahirde kalma aldanırsın, komazlar yoksa gelmezler sanırsın. Hani insanlar bir yola girince
when people hit the road for something, and we feel like we'd like to invite our loved ones to join us, and choosing the path of these valleys, they are invited for purification. Do not be cheated by the appearances. Those who do not come are actually not invited.
İşte bu son derece
This warm, who can be a child with a child, this lady called İlhan Ayverdi is going to be presented by the paper of Fahrünnisa Bilecik, who almost spent her whole life with the studies of Lugat. We would have liked to listen to that from her directly, but she couldn't make it. One day we went there, and I think it was Mother Sâmiha. Someone said, I said they couldn't make it. There was an obstacle. And obstacle, she said, mani, obstacle in Turkish, is a kind of poetry in the classical Turkish, and which rhymes with the obstacle. So we will listen this paper from Yekta Zülfikar, who can be regarded as the sister or daughter of Can Güzel Zülfikar. Fahrünnisa Bilecik couldn't make it, and I'm going to be reading his paper. Late Aziz İlhan teyze, we're reciting Fatihas to the spirit of Aziz, Aunt Aziz. İlhan Ayverdi, an honored, perfected human being from the pre-eternal to eternity. Open your eye of your illuminated heart to the light, spreading from a friend of a truth. Only a light such as this will show you the reality. You will find the correct path in this light. If you have if you see even the last of the candles lit in this way, know that the light you see and are illuminated by was lit by that first light and is showing you its light. What is the difference? Whatever carries this light and whatever inherits this, any valley is inheriting this from the light of Prophet himself. In short, in whatever sign of the zodiac the sun rises, it's the same sun. One of those friends of truth carrying this light was undoubtedly İlhan Ayverdi. Let's learn about İlhan Ayverdi. She was born in Manisa, Akhisar on October 24, 1926. Her father was Murat Tolun, one of the heroes of the national struggle, who was awarded with the War of Independence Medal, and who was a member of a Halk Party and as well as the Tayyari community. Her mother was Pakize Tolun, the center of her home, a monument of compassion, a mother who raised her 4 orphans with many sacrifices. She's of Caucasian descent on her father's side and Rumelian on her mother's. After completing her primary and secondary education in Akhisar, she graduated from İzmir Karataş High School in 1943. She continued her education after 2 years due to illness at Istanbul University Faculty of Arts Department of Turkish Language and Literature. While studying at the Literature Department, she had to give up because of monetary problems. Her meeting with Mehmet Örtenoğlu while working at the Istanbul Education Division would be one of the turning points of her life. This exceptional person had been taken prisoner by the British during the First World War. A young girl is crying in front of an old man. The second turning point of İlhan Ayverdi's life was her meeting with Sâmiha Ayverdi. One day, she goes to Garbis Fikri's bookstore, Cağaloğlu, with The Living Dead, and she realizes that her world changes, and she immediately runs to Mehmet Örtenoğlu and asks if he knew Sâmiha Ayverdi or not. The response was simply yes. In fact, Mehmet knew the family very well and had been going to the discourse circles for many years, but in accordance with the necessities of adab. And this continues like this for 3 years. On a fruitful day of 1948, Mehmet Dede takes İlhan Hanım's hand and takes her to Sâmiha Ayverdi. In the first meeting, Sâmiha Ayverdi asks İlhan Hanım, "Do you do namaz?" Sometimes, she says. Pray it, Sâmiha Ayverdi responds. After leaving there, they go to Kenan Rifai's mansion, who was also Sâmiha Ayverdi's teacher. After the first meeting, which most likely occurred in 1949, İlhan Hanım would go to this residence in Fatih many times until this exceptional persona passed away in 1915. Again, one day with her mom, she goes to visit Mehmet Örtenoğlu, and she remained downstairs. And when Kenan Rifai asked, "Where is İlhan?" and Mehmet Örtenoğlu said, "She remained downstairs in order not to be a disturbance." And the reply was, "Could a person ever disturb their father?" I've witnessed the weepings whenever they speak about this incident. In the meantime, she had graduated and begun teaching, succeeding in leading both her education and her work. She becomes an outstanding literature teacher and teaches at different schools. Her meetings with Sâmiha Ayverdi, which were relatively few, became much more frequent, but they became more frequent when she marries Ekrem Hakkı Ayverdi. And this connection has been carried out by beloved elder Mehmet Dede. So this is, as she describes, she enters a beautiful world of culture. So this short expression by Sâmiha Ayverdi is important here. If I hope İlhan, the sincere monument to whom Allah has given inner and outer beauty altogether, I hope that Allah is content with İlhan Ayverdi in both worlds and honored being from the pre-eternal to eternity. I'm skipping some parts of my presentation. In 1976, she continued the work of preparing and writing Great Turkish Dictionary with examples which Kubelt had decided to publish in 1926, and she continues 29 years for that purpose. The preparation phase of the work goes back even further. This work, which becomes the greatest inventory of the Turkish language from the 13th century on, which has been ornamented with thousands of examples, and she relates the following about the preparatory period and the difficulties. She says, everyone had given up. We could have given up as well. But in accordance with the principle of a promise given to people is a promise given to truth, to Allah. Leaving a job half done was not for us. It would be continued, but with whom? As the head of the community, it was my responsibility. I was neither a language scholar nor someone who dealt with dictionaries. As Yahya Kemal states, Turkish was my mother's milk on my tongue. I loved my language. With Sâmiha Ayverdi and Ekrem Hakkı Ayverdi's great encouragement and support, I began to work of writing. Receiving support and encouragement from everywhere I applied also increased my hope. From the day I began writing the entries, it was as if my personal life no longer existed. This work filled upon my days, months, years. I had taken on a responsibility that would crack my shoulders. Despite the negative situation of her health, she continued. After deaths of her friend and mother Sâmiha Ayverdi and her dear husband, all of these duties continued. With your permission, I'd like to move on, calling her İlhan, Mother İlhan. Mother İlhan used to work 7 days a week. I never remember her wasting a time. She was always busy with something. When Sâmiha Anne used to say about her, you get rest while you work. As far as I was with them, she went through difficulties of health and operations. I remember her being content with all that she went through and smiling. Someone had said, as if you're not going to a hospital but for a picnic. And I was thinking about how she stood all the difficulties, and she said the prophets also suffered health issues. So what matters is your attitude on the face of difficulties. And she used to say we should be content and patient with what happens. Whatever happens is good, is khair. One day, when they were together with Sâmiha Anne in Çengelköy, the young prospect officers of the army went to the seaside, and one of them was about to drown, and he had lost the possibility of entering the exam. And Sâmiha Anne said, oh, he got upset, but he should know that he wouldn't be a good Navy without knowing how to swim. The greatest support for our work has been them, and they always said it's always the training of the self, and they directed us for what is good and what is beautiful. God created people in different forms and with different abilities. People should first assign what they can do and should never give up. They should do whatever they can. The zakah of the youth is the service of humanity. Of course, you would study, you would have a family, you would raise children, but you would have time for service as well. You would support and protect those in need and those elderly. So you would compete in the service of good. When there's an opportunity, you should jump in and say, it's always me. you should bring service to the forefront and not your personality. And when you do a sin, when you do a negative thing, you should always repent, and you should always have ideas and projects to carry them out and contribute to the progress of the country. If you say, what can I do? The issues are like a mountain. How can I deal with them? This is not the path of hopelessness. Effort brings help. It's not in vain. Father is help, son is the effort. You must work without tiring, without giving up, without getting fed up, without thinking about big or small service or falling into conceit, and firmly embracing each other. This is a relay race. You will not leave it halfway. You will not see each other's faults. Every person has a beautiful and good side. You'll work to find it out. You might not love them, but you are bound to respect them. You will not hurt, nor will you get hurt. You will view the created pleasantly because of the Creator. Instead of commenting and being presumptive about others, you will analyze yourself. You will work to replace your bad habits with good ones. You'll act with consciousness, and you'll be generous, and you'll smile at least when you don't have anything to say. Whatever you're here, whatever you come up, there's a lesson, and you should try to catch the lesson. The time is capital. Do not spend and waste it. Keep your promises, for promises are vows. Do not ever let up on accounting the ego. Take serving people for truth as a motto. Many more can be added to these words and attributes, but what is important is not listing them. It is to answer how many of them we have and to what extent we can apply them. Let's do what falls onto us, and Allah will do what falls to His glory. They always ask to treat people. They always asked us to treat people warmly and mercifully. We cannot be angry with anyone when we consider people follow their own characters and natures. From time to time, I would read books, magazines, newspapers with İlhan Anne. We had just read an article. The writer's style was very harsh, but she had said, we must not worry about the harshness of the style, but the stiffness of the ideas. Those who you cannot lose the real target here. We are entitled to treat people with justice and good manners. The same principle, of course, goes for those who should control themselves. This goes to everyone, basically, who should self-rule. Those who has been able to rule the self and the masses is İlhan Ayverdi. She's an example of that. She was also she led the founding of Kubel to Academy, and she raised thousands of peoples, and she always found solution proposals. She never gave up. She never was hopeless, and she never gave up on thinking, and she transcended the very, very present, and she was a moderate person, and she had the ability to distinguish between what's right and what's wrong. It's not possible to teach İlhan Anne in the perfect words. Let's see her again. The world is changing with a high speed. As long as we live here, we have to follow the fashion. But for the ones who know the Creator, life is not only this worldly life. What is real life is we will go in the eternal world when the time comes. The laws of that land are unchanging truths. Therefore, today's person, while obeying the developments and changes ordering this world's provisions, must keep Allah's unchanging laws as guides for himself or herself. Then, whether the light of 21st century or 40th century or 1000th century, she or he must carry the orders of Islam. This most beautiful person passed away in November 2009. She began her life in the eternal world next to her loved ones. She reached the unending day. Mehmet Dede used to say, knowing a great person is like the sun rising over a person. For the many years I was with her, and thankfully today I felt and continue to feel the warmth of that sun upon me. Thank you very much.
Evet, metni hazırlayan Fahrünnisa Bilecik'e
Fahrünnisa Bilecik prepared the text and Yekta Bilecik had read it. I thank them both. I hope she was not under my pressure because she didn't use all her time. And I'd like to thank her for saving time for us.
tasavvufta
In the spiritual hierarchy of tasawwuf, there's a concept of rijalul ghaib. At the beginning, kutb. On two sides, two imams, and when you put them together, it's called triples, and the fours, sevens, and 40s. And these fours are called evtad erba. That is like 4 columns, 4 pillars. It might be fitting to this context or not, but Hazrat Kenan Rifai's school, Meshkure Sargut, is one of the pillars of his school. And with this beautiful face and a good conversation, she would lead people to spirituality, both İlhan Hanım and Sâmiha Hanım. And if we compared them with Meshkure Hanım would stand out more with her emotional side. I think this is why she was more influential with her speeches. The knowledge about Meshkure Hanım is going to be provided by her beloved daughter Asuman Kulaksız.
Ruhi ve
Hazrat Kenan Rifai has actually shaped my spiritual world, and we are commemorating him. And on this special day, I'm embracing you all with love. I think we all understand that being human is not simply to be born in the shape of a human. In order to be a human being, which means to wear the Muhammadan beautiful conduct, it's not enough to just be born of the human race or even to be born a Muslim. According to Kenan Rifai, edep is what separates animal from man. So with a situation like this, to understand and to take as an example those who have been able to be humans is a must. Meshkure Sargut is a beautiful human raised by Kenan Rifai, a rose-loving, rose-smelling lover of truth. Born in Edirne Kapı as the third daughter of a Rifai father and the Kadiri mother in 1925, her mother Şadiye Hanım had become Kenan Rifai's disciple shortly before her birth and announced this in her characteristic urgency and truthfulness to everyone, calling them to join her path and telling those who wouldn't come that she wouldn't be able to see them anymore. Upon her teacher, a sheikh of 4 tariqs, giving her permission to choose, she said that she wanted to be Kadiri, but later, learning that most of the Ihwan, the circle around her, were Rifai, she said to him, I was impolite, make me be whatever you deem appropriate, and thus express her feelings in the presence of her teacher. And Kenan Rifai, smiling, said, what difference does it make, Şadiye? You're all Kenani. So Şadiye Hanım, with her husband Remzi Bey, walk on the same path, was very saddened when her third child was also a girl. So her Murshid, who is the spy of hearts, told her to name her third daughter Meshkure, which means the one due to whom we are thankful. So Meshkure would learn what her name meant from her teacher years later. When Meshkure was only 40 days old, the family moved right across from their Murshid's house. So in this way, Meshkure passes through the door of the lodge with her swaddle. she benefited from that great door until Kenan Rifai's passing in 1950. So this would be with chocolates filling her skirts at the beginning, and then would continue with wisdoms poured into her heart. While on the one hand her education continued with the national education system, on the other she came to be filled with very deep tasawwuf knowledge and the profound love of Allah and Mürşit from a very early age. Kenan Rifai, by saying, Meşgure, in my hand a tambour, I am embroidering you. Ornaments this pre-eternally blessed servant of God's with the Muhammadan conduct and forms her into a human. Meşgure would actually stitch her teacher's every word, every look, every point of view, every behavior into her memory and her heart. And in this way, she would spend her entire life, every moment with her teacher. From now on, in every step she would take, every word she would say, every manner she would show, they would be all directed by her teacher's teachings. Everything would pass through the sieve of Kenan Rifai. She would be very conscious of not doing anything that would go against his teachings and wishes. Now she was painted in the colors of her mürşit. And by her hand, she embroidered a couplet for her teacher. Sometimes I exist and stand with your beauty. Sometimes I leave existence and become your beauty. This couplet is still hung on the wall of his room. Meşgure, in accordance with her mother's wishes, married the orphan son of Halide Hanım, Dr. Ömer Faruk Sargut. Her only wish from her husband was that he not hinder her spiritual education at the lodge. But Mr. Sargut, while full of love, but also equally jealous, was never an obstacle to his wife's activities on this spiritual path. He would also reach the happiness of being able to serve by becoming Kenan Rifai's doctor. In 1950, the pain of separation comes. Tears become floods. Never having left the spiritual presence of the Sultan, Meşgure had tasted the beauty of being with him in this world, and the body could not adapt to his absence. When she fell asleep after crying a lot one night, he appears in meaning in the dream. She asks, "Oh, my teacher, why did you leave us?" And he answers, "My shirt was worn out, Meşgure." From that moment on, until her last breath, she would wake up remembering him, spend the day with the knowledge that she was always in his presence, and thus would be stylish, elegant, clean. She would go to sleep remembering him. She would meet every painful and sweet event with the armor of her mürşit, and she would advise everyone in this way. While her older sister Süheyla was undergoing a cancer operation, she had stayed with her at the hospital, and upon Süheyla Hanım not liking the soup warned her, saying, "My mürşit did not like complaints like this. He would say this in these types of situations." And her sister asked, "My mürşit, even in soup?" Yes, for Meşgure, even the salt in the soup was her mürşit. Every book she read, every movie she watched, every country she traveled to, she would share all the beauties she found and the happiness she felt in all that she did with her mürşit. Her mind would always be with her mürşit in pain and in happiness. She spent her whole life knowing to be thankful for the reason and was continually thankful to Allah. After her mürşit's passing, Meşgure, in her own words, took refuge in teacher Nazlı Hanım, someone about whom her teacher Kenan Rifai had said, "Those who want to see dead before dying should look to Nazlı." So she continued her education with Nazlı Hanım. Throughout this, she adopted a young girl as her spiritual child, and then later birthed two daughters, Safiye, Cemal and Asuman, respectively. Now, Dr. Faruk Sargut was imprisoned during the coup in 1960. So, taking refuge in her father's house with her daughters, Meşgure became a monument of faith and trust in Allah amongst all of the material impossibilities and uncertainties about her husband's safety, and thus did justice to the spiritual training she had received. She passed through these hard days with full submission to Allah. With Nazlı Anne's passing away that same year, she began the years she would spend knee to knee, heart to heart with Sâmiha Ayverdi. From now on, she would begin discourses to the İhvan in meetings and spread her Mürşit's teaching by reading and explaining under the guidance of her Sâmiha abla. Alongside this, she was busy with the associations and foundations that had been established with the leadership of Sâmiha Anne in order to serve the people and the country. Donations were collected by going door to door to shops for the first establishment of Turkish Women's Cultural Association. Much effort was spent in order to remember the subtleties of our culture. Later she would support heart and soul the activities for service to Islam, which included the establishment of endowed chairs both in the country and abroad by the association. She would be very excited, and despite her old age would travel to the US in order to personally be at the opening ceremony of the establishment of the chair there, and thus demonstrate her sensitivity on this topic. The Kubbe-Altı Foundation would become a hearth of wisdom for many youths, both from Istanbul and from places, to be made aware of topics relating to spirituality and the homeland. These are days committed to service within a discipline whereby every word from Sâmiha Ayverdi was accepted as coming from her Mürşit. After Sâmiha Ayverdi's passing away, she was aware of the responsibility that had been placed on her shoulders and was at the head of her works with the same discipline and diligence. Lastly, she would roll up her sleeves in order to establish the Cenan Foundation, with her belief that in this way Kenan Rifai's statement that tasawwuf would one day be taught in academies would be accomplished, and she would start work with Kainat Büyükaksoy, and by spending the greatest possible effort in the purchase and restoration of the lodge and for the acquiring of the necessary assets for the foundation, she became the cornerstone of the project. Now she was the meşgûre anne of many people. Motherhood befits her well, for she is the connoisseur of material, spiritual giving. She gives to whoever asks. She gives again to the one who asks again. To those who need but cannot say, she would give with buckets, money, cash, clothes, jewelry, headscarves, whatever she has, whatever she finds, she would distribute. She would act with the same beneficence when it came to prayers. She would pray for the whole world, for our country, name by name, for everyone who asked during the morning prayer. When the list became longer, in a period that would sometimes take minutes, sometimes hours, she would continue sure of Allah's giving without feeling laziness, boredom, or tiredness. She would show the same generosity in giving and sharing what she had learned from her Mürşit. Including the year she passed away, she would enlighten hearts, call to peace, and invite to being a human through the discourses she had done for more than 50 years. When the day of the discourse had come, neither sickness nor any other excuse could stop her. Today she continues her services through her 4 books, which have been compiled under the name From Illuminated Heart to Illuminated Heart. Motherhood befits her well because she spreads love, mercy, peace to her environment. Every morning she would care for and say hello and talk with all the living things in her house. From the parakeets to the plants, non-living things would also receive their share of compassion. She would always put her things where they belonged, always sit in the same chair, would apply the understand of fidelity she had seen from her master to the material. She was always in the presence and always at peace. She was one of the few humans whose behavior was the same when confronted by both pain and happiness. She had put on the feature of being content with Allah like a dress, and never stayed straight or made a mistake in the face of any trials. Upon a warning from her teacher, she never cried for anything other than the love of Allah. She received news of both births and deaths by saying, "Oh, good, mashallah." She was balancing and unifying. She would not care if there was talk against her. She would not blacklist the speaker. She would forgive. She would not hold grudges. She would not get angry easily. She would embrace everyone and everything with the same love and compassion. Motherhood befits her well because she keeps her word. Never has it been seen that she did not keep a promise or not arrive somewhere at the appointed time. She would not lie. She would not do anything that went against her conscience. Motherhood befits her well because the mercy she felt towards all created was all the highest order. She would not even be happy with someone looking harshly at a created. Being the solution to someone's problem was her greatest happiness. She would invigorate those whom she touched. Everyone benefited her. Everyone wanted to be near her, to benefit from the love and peace she spread around her. Meşgule Sargut was one of those who could carry both this world and the hereafter together, because this is what she had learned from her teacher. The fastidiousness she showed in her prayers had almost become famous. When she was to go on a trip, she would first ask and learn that place's prayer times, and the direction to Mecca would be determined. And while her search for the Kıble when she was staying at a hotel that would spin around itself in Antalya is among the sweet memories, the hotel authorities were also alerted to providing compasses in the rooms. Until her doctor forbid her, she showed the same meticulousness in her fasting and lived every Ramadan in great joy. On the other hand, it was possible to see her sometimes in a movie theater, sometimes at a play, and sometimes at the opera. She loved to read, listen to music, and to travel. While doing all this, she would place Allah at the very center and experience the pleasure of viewing his works. She would always draw lessons from everything that happened to her. I witnessed her become emotional while watching a show about a killer whale and saying, even if this whale learns manners, how is it that we still continue to follow our ego despite all the efforts spent on us? Meşgule Sargut united with her Reşit in the month of February in 2013. The longing she had felt ended and ours started. The poor she had looked after in the neighborhood, the neighbors, shopkeepers, the personnel, doctors, nurses of the hospital, with whom she had spent the last month, whomever she had seen, whoever she had smiled to, all were affected by her. Everyone felt the difference in her, for she had completely submitted herself to the will of her Murshid, had painted herself in his colors. She was Rujol, who had the beautiful conduct of her Murshid, a rose-loving, rose-smelling lover of the truth. What dies is the animal, lovers never die.
Evet efendim.
Yes, now we would like to thank to these exhaustive minutes were made easy by the smooth, fluid, eloquent address of Miss Asuman. We have about an hour and a half of delay. So for those of you who will stay for the next session, I wish God Almighty to bless patience. But since they're gonna hear great things, I am sure they'll be more than happy to stay.
Efendim vakit ilerledi, ara vermiyoruz. Son oturuma arasız olarak devam edeceğiz.
Üç tanesi.